You're like most parents. You have a lot of questions about this process called special education. This section of the DVD is designed to provide you with straightforward answers to the most commonly asked questions. Answers to the majority of these questions can be found in the Parent's Guide to Special Education. For a free copy of that resource, contact your school division's Parent Resource Center. Let's get started. What is an IEP? An IEP is a written document that is developed to meet the child's unique needs. The IEP must be in effect before special education and/or related services can be provided to your child. How does my child qualify for an IEP? Your child has an IEP because he or she was found to be eligible as a child with a disability. This was determined at the eligibility meeting, where reports were shared about how your child is performing in the school setting. The IEP will determine what services your child receives and how those services will be carried out. It also details what goals your child will be working on as he or she receives those services. I don't want my child to be labeled for life. Will this go on his permanent records? Your child will only receive services as long as he needs them. Each year, the IEP is updated for the upcoming school year. Every 3 years, your child will be re-evaluated to see if he continues to need special education services. If he does, the case manager develops an IEP for the year. If not, services may be reduced or terminated, but not without your permission. The testing and meetings minutes, IEPs, and progress reports are part of your child's permanent record. If you need help in reviewing or understanding parts of the reports, ask the person who wrote the report to explain. Why should I attend my child's IEP meeting? It is very important to attend the IEP meeting. You will be asked to share information about your child that the school staff may need to know and/or to provide input as the IEP is being completed. Why should my child attend his or her IEP meeting? Your child should attend his or her IEP meeting because this plan is being developed for him or her to benefit from the education the school is providing. If the student is able to contribute to the discussion and provide input, they should attend the meeting. Also, as your child becomes older, the IEP will become more important as the child begins thinking about what they'll be doing after they leave high school. The IEP can make sure that your child takes the necessary courses and/or acquires the necessary skills in high school that he or she needs to graduate and move on with their adult life. Who creates the content of an IEP? Typically, the case manager will prepare a draft of the IEP for all team members to look at prior to the IEP meeting. Anyone who will be providing services in the school setting should contribute to the draft. You should also be asked to contribute to the IEP by the case manager. The case manager is usually a special education teacher who makes sure your child's IEP is implemented in the school setting. Communicate with the case manager prior to the IEP meeting about any changes or additions that you feel are necessary. The draft IEP must be available to you 2 days before the meeting. This will give you time to review the draft and make any suggestions for additions or changes before the meeting. I'm afraid I will feel so intimidated by all the professionals at the meeting. The parent brings very good information to the team that teachers may not be aware of. This information can be how you see your child learning best, like through active learning, learning in a quiet environment, asking lots of questions, needs to do see and do activities, etc., as well as things that may be motivating to help your child learn. You are an integral part of your child's IEP team. What should I do if I don't agree with the team? Good communication is a key part of the IEP. You should feel comfortable in letting the other members of the team know that you do not agree and see if a compromise can be worked out. Sometimes you can try a specific type of service documented for a specified period of time, for example, 1 report period, and then agree to meet to see how things are going. If it's going well, then no changes will need to be made. If not going well, then the team should meet to discuss what changes need to happen and how that will be documented. What do I do if I'm not satisfied with the outcome of the IEP meeting? You should always begin by contacting your child's case manager to set up a team meeting to discuss why you're not satisfied with the outcome of the meeting. If you continue to have concerns once you've met with your child's school team, you should contact the principal of your child's school to see if they can help the IEP team come to an agreement. Further concerns should be directed to the person in your district that takes care of special education within your district. If still not satisfied, you can ask that person what needs to be done further. You can also access the process for concerns on the Department of Education website or in your Parent's Guide to Special Education. Your local Parent Resource Center is also a source for information about what you can do if you're not satisfied with the outcome of your IEP meeting. Must services in the IEP be provided by a special education teacher? IDEA and federal special education regulations do not require that services listed in the IEP be provided by a special education teacher. Can parents ask that the IEP be revised? Parents and anyone else on the IEP team can ask for a meeting to revise the IEP. Parents must give permission for any changes to take place. Is there a limit to the number of goals in the IEP? There is no limit to the number of goals that can be written in an IEP. Keep in mind, however, that goals are written to be accomplished in a school year and should address the needs of the student as detailed in the present level of academic achievement and functional performance. The PLAAFP, or Present Level of Academic Achievement and Functional Performance, or sometimes called PLOP, is baseline information about your child's knowledge and skills. Present levels are the starting point for setting IEP goals and measuring progress towards those goals. Can an IEP meeting be postponed? If an IEP meeting is postponed, it may be because the team is waiting for new information or results from testing. However, an IEP meeting cannot be postponed to such a point that the timelines are violated. A meeting must take place even if it's to indicate that more time is needed. In order for the IEP to reflect ability and goals accurately, it may be wise to wait for new information. However, there should be some idea of when the information will be available. No meeting should be postponed indefinitely. Can more than one disability be listed on the IEP? Yes. Typically, the disability that most significantly impacts your child in the school environment is listed as a primary disability. Any secondary disability or disabilities should be related to the primary disability. Is there a 10-day timeline for IEP meetings? No. IDEA does not include a timeline for an IEP meeting when parents request a meeting to review or revise the student's IEP. However, when a child is found eligible for the first time, the IEP to implement services must be written within 30 days. The IEP team should also meet if new information becomes available. When do I get a copy of the IEP? It's best practice that you should leave the IEP meeting with a completed copy of the IEP. However, there are times when that may not be possible. For example, if significant changes were made to the draft copy, or if parents are on a short time schedule and cannot wait for copies to be made. In those cases, the completed IEP should be mailed to you as soon as possible. Does a child need an IEP and a 504 plan? There is nothing in the law that indicates a child should have an IEP for some needs and a 504 plan for other needs. One plan should incorporate and plan for the student's needs. Having two plans is confusing and unnecessary. How can I tell if my child is making progress and is on track to meet the annual goals on his or her IEP? Frequent contact and regular conferences with your child's case manager should help to let your child's teacher know you're concerned about his or her progress and to document that progress for you. If your child is not on track to meet annual goals, then the teacher should be able to provide documentation as to what progress he or she has made and why your child may not meet the goals. Should my child's IEP include extended school year services? Some children with disabilities require special education and/or related services longer than the usual school year in order to receive a free and appropriate public education, also known as FAPE. Most children, with and without disabilities, experience some regression over the summer. IEP teams need to consider ESY services if the child experiences significant regression during breaks from school and cannot recoup those skills in a reasonable period of time. Does an IEP make a child ineligible for sports? Prohibiting a child from participation in a sport or other extracurricular activities because he or she has a disability and or an IEP is discrimination and a violation of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Should poor organizational skills be accommodated in the IEP? Some children with disabilities need accommodations to their educational program. Even with consistent teaching and strategies, areas of weakness identified on the IEP will probably always give the child some difficulty, whether it's with organizational skills or remembering the multiplication tables. The IEP should focus on strengths and help the child to find ways to compensate for the problem areas. Can a paraprofessional's name be written in the IEP? Services on the IEP are not dependent on a single person and/or program. An IEP should be written to reflect what services the child needs. A parent can always write to a principal or director of special education requesting a certain person, whether it's a teacher or paraprofessional, but it's up to the discretion of the administrator as to how personnel are assigned as they look at the needs of the whole school and/or school system. What is an effective date on the IEP? Effective date means the date the IEP goes into effect and ends. It can be the date of the meeting and lasts to the end of the school year, or it can be the duration of the upcoming academic year if you're writing an IEP for the next school year. Do I have to sign the IEP at the meeting? I may need some time to process. You do not have to sign an IEP at the meeting. If you do not sign to give consent, the IEP cannot be implemented. If you choose to take the IEP home to look it over before you sign, you can do that, letting the case manager know when you will return it. How can I understand all the language that's used at the meeting? Refer to the section of this DVD, Common Acronyms and Abbreviations. Don't be afraid to ask questions if you don't understand what someone's talking about or referring to. This is your child's education, and you have a right to understand the language that's being used in meetings and in reports. Call your local Parent Resource Center if you need help. If my child qualifies for special education services, how much of the regular class time will he miss? And will he have to make up the regular class work? Will he be taken out of the classroom and given one-on-one special instruction? The amount of services is determined by the IEP. You are a part of the team that determines what the services are and how and when those services take place during the school day. Will other children make fun of him for being in the special group and/or riding the special bus? Typically, there are many times throughout the school day that children are pulled from their classes. Sometimes it's for special education services. Other times it may be for other services that are offered at the school. If someone is making fun of your child, he should report that to an adult, preferably his classroom teacher. There is a no bullying policy, and bullying is not tolerated. If the behavior continues to happen, report it to the teacher. Follow your chain of command if the problem does not get resolved. Can homework be reduced? That's a question to ask your child's teacher. It could be that the amount of homework needs to be reduced or broken up over the course of a few days. It might help to use a timer and let your child know that he will get a break when he works well for a specified number of minutes. This may or may not be part of the IEP depending on your child's disability. The Parent Resource Center can offer strategies to help with homework. Ask in your child's teacher. Since my child has a medical diagnosis, shouldn't he get some help at school? When a child is considered for special education services, the Eligibility Committee looks at a variety of information, including how learning is being impacted. If your child has a medical condition, it may or may not have an impact on his learning. You can make a referral to the school to see if your child can be evaluated for special education or a 504 plan. What are the guidelines for how much time that my child should be getting each day to help him with reading, etc.? That is a decision that is made when your child's IEP is developed. The teachers who are developing the IEP have experience in working with children with special needs and can help guide you with that question. Sometimes the IEP needs to be changed if what the team has decided is not working for your child. You can always conference with the teacher to see if changes need to be made. Do the teachers keep a record of how much time that they give to each student? Can I see these records? Teachers need to keep documentation that students are working on the goals in the IEP. Data collection is an important part of what the special education teacher does. Usually, the results of this documentation are reported to parents in the progress reports. You can always conference with the teacher to see what your child is working on at school and how you can help to reinforce the same skills at home.